For the U.S. to remain competitive in practice, more and more and more lower cost, lower skilled jobs are going to, whether you like it or not, have to move offshore.
At ang katumbas ng mabibili ng minimum sahod sa isang araw, sahod ng manggagawa.
Minimum daily wage in the U.S. can buy 19 chickens.
Sa isang araw ay ang mabibili nito ay 19 na manok. At ikukumpara natin sa Pilipinas.
If we compare this with the Philippines, minimum wage here can buy only 3/4 of a single chicken.
3/4 na manok.
There, of course, is the profit motive and the motive to reduce costs that compel companies to take their labor-intensive operations offshore. But that is not to say that they do it in anything other than an honorable way.
Quite honestly, companies are down here because they want to cut their manufacturing costs. Mexico is just one of many countries that provides a lower cost manufacturing opportunity. It's very repetitive, very labor, manual intensive. Let's put it bluntly, it's boring work. They cannot find the American worker that wants to work on that job.
Well, we just got our layoff slips and they're moving the work.
Everything went to Mexico, so the people in Mexico will enjoy our jobs, so we're home, starving.
We need work the same as anybody else. We can do it as good as they can or better.
The rule of the game seems to be if 50% of your manufacturing cost is labor in the United States, you either automate or you get out.
A new industrial revolution, born through developments in high technology and communications, has enabled manufacturing industries to extend assembly lines across international borders, sometimes reaching halfway around the world. More than 50 countries now host offshore production manufacturing. Mexico began by opening its entire border with the United States to offshore assembly.
Because of the nearness of the United States to Mexico, it became possible to have the management team on the U.S. side, together with its high technology and its high capital, living in a U.S. environment, and on the Mexican side, abundant unskilled labor.
God made us neighbors, but who made us friends? The interchange of people in the industry and needs and goods that have to be going across the borders. That is what is tying our two countries closer and closer together.
Well, when the plants first came to the city, we all expected them to hire the unemployed male. But very soon we discovered that the unemployed male population was not the ideal workforce, and young women between the ages of 16 and 21 were the only ones hired.
Nearly 90% of all workers in production are women. They've become breadwinners in environments where employment is scarce for men as well as for women.
Before I got married, I was working. I convinced my husband to let me keep my job, even though the wages in these factories are practically nothing. With the miserable salaries of the two of us, it's not even enough to buy the basics.
O sea que yo duré como unos 3 años soldando.
I have worked as a solderer for 3 years. We don't have protection, so all the fumes go into our eyes. There is no ventilation for the fumes, so we absorb them ourselves.
The level of permissible use of certain toxic, very toxic type of material is much higher in Mexico than it is in the United States. precautions taken by the plants to protect their workers are also almost non-existent.
The problem with the maquiladora industry is to think that it's either a panacea on the one hand or a work of the devil on the other hand. The problem with the maquiladora industry is for countries or situations when they give carte blanche to the maquiladora industry and they come saving the life of a country and producing so many goods that the government doesn't put any kind of regulations, any kind of restrictions to these open doors. The maquiladora industry is something that is presented where there are not too many alternatives, particularly in a period of crisis. The main point right now is to produce jobs. Produce jobs first and think later.
Me separé, entré a la fábrica.
When I went to work at the factory, it was just another routine.
Rutina, ¿verdad? Ya no eran las cacerolas, sino eran componentes, ¿verdad?
It wasn't pots and pans, it was components.
Pero yo sigo siendo igual trabajo
It's the same work every day, from 6 in the morning until I go to bed.
Hay que trabajar. Hay que traer el pan a la casa.
I have to bring bread into this house.
Hay que vivir una vida de caricatura, ¿vale?
We live a life like cartoons, running all the time.
Pero pues a la vez es satisfactorio porque pues los niños lo recompensan todo con su cariño.
It is satisfying. Children give me my reward with their love, their enthusiasm. The ones who are studying have good grades. That's the reward for the work I do.
Y no estar sentada un solo rato, me dicen.
Relatives say, please give those poor feet a rest. They never have a vacation. I say, the day I die, they're going to rest. But while alive, you just have to take advantage of life.
Ang nanay, sa ngayon, nasa probinsya siya. Tapos, bilang housekeeper and at the same time...
My mother lives in the countryside. She keeps house, and at the same time, she works in fields.
You know, the rainy season's coming and the house needs repair. Any more holes in the roof and our house is going to slide right down this hill. The money I'm making in the fields, it's hardly enough for food.
Dahil na rin sa kahirapan nga, nagkaroon ako ng idea.
Because of our poverty, I decided to help my parents. My father's salary was not enough to support the family.
Nagiging sapat para sa amin. Nagkaroon ako ng idea na kailangan makapagtrabaho ako, maging independent ako.
I had this idea that I should work to be independent from my family, to be able to stand on my own. I can't depend on my parents forever.
Ambisyon, kung ambisyon nga matatawag na.
My ambition was to continue my education and to get a college degree.
By the hundreds of thousands, young women across southern and eastern Asia follow dreams of education and the promise of work. They leave rice fields and villages to swell the populations of cities and industrial zones.
Halos lahat ay nagtatanong doon sa aming bayan, sa gitnang kanluran na aking pinagmulan. Sila'y nalilito, ba't daw ako nagkaganito? Kung ano ang dahilan, ako lang nakakaalam.
In San Jose, where we have our offices, a typical per hour rate would be from $4.50 to $5.50. In a country like the Philippines, a typical per hour rate may be something like 70 cents. So you see there is a very large savings. It is possible to manage offshore operations from across the ocean. American companies fabricate semiconductor dies using very expensive equipment. They are then packed and they are shipped by air. They land in Manila. Within the next 12 hours, they are on the floor of a subcomponent assembly facility, and the production process begins.
Natanggap ako sa Dynetics, mapasok nga ako doon. Excited na excited.
I was excited when they gave me a job at Dynetics in Manila.
Oh, maganda rito, malaki nga ang sweldo namin, katunayan.
The salary seemed high.
Nakita ko yung sa pagsusuot nila.
And then I saw the uniforms. They were beautiful, so I knew it was going to be better working in electronics than in a textile factory.
Di ba sa mga textile lang. Nung nasa loob pa ako, nasa second optical inspector ako, yung gumagamit ng high-power microscope.
As an optical inspector, I used high-powered microscopes. It's very hard because for 8 continuous hours, your eyes are focused in this microscope. This is very straining, and many complain about this.
Marami nga nagko-complain yan eh.
My daughter, who works in an electronics factory, told me I can't go on any longer because my eyes can't see anymore.
Nandiyan yung masusuka ka, nahihilo ka.
Sometimes we vomit, we faint, and we get permanently blurred vision.
Yung mga iba nga dyan, nabubulag, ganun.
It's a third of the trade in any part of the world. So if one puts up a factory in Hong Kong now, he has a real problem getting the girls to do scope work. It's not so in the Philippines. As a matter of fact, they like scope work, and they do diminish their eyesight if they don't follow normal procedure. But these girls are all high school and college girls. They're in their teens and in their 20s, and they can take a lot of abuse. They abuse their bodies a lot.
There's a place in that factory that the moment you enter, you cannot open your eyes because of the fumes. You can't breathe. We complained about this, but the answer we got was, it's a matter of getting used to it.
The matter of toxic chemicals in the thin plating area. In these areas, the workers are given special protective breathing devices.
Even if they are drowsy and they want to go to sleep, they try to produce what they are asked to produce. There is no security because after a few months, a few years, you'll be fired. Then there'll be new recruits.
Noong January 30th,
one of the worst things which happened was in January, when 2,000 of us were laid off. We won't forget it. They told us it can be likened to a ship which is sinking. You have to find ways to lighten the load and get rid of some of the people so the ship won't go down. I told them you should find other ways that would save the people and not drown them.
I heard them say, okay, go on strike. We will just transfer the factory to another country.
I think the underlying force behind the policy is that these plants want the mobility to move any place in the world, and they do not need to guarantee any worker seniority.
We no longer live in a 5-mile diameter world, as we did back in the 1800s when we were largely an agrarian society. We live in a society that includes literally all people of the world. If a worker in some place else, for instance in Asia, is doing better work for less money, that's going to impact us here in the United States.
Atari is in the business of making consumer electronics products at an affordable price and at a competitive price. And with manufacturing costs rising, it was becoming increasingly difficult to keep those prices at attractive levels. So what we did is we took a look at our options and finally came up with the idea of moving most of our manufacturing plants to the Far East.
Burned. I feel burned. Burned because not too long ago I was going around saying, well, I'm not going to stop working until there's no more work, you know? And I said, well, as long as Atari keeps on making their things, I'll never be out of work. I'm out of work today. I don't have no job, you know?
What do you think of those layoffs? Would you like to help us to stop them?
Gosh, there's going to be a lot more people unemployed. There's so many now. It's just terrible. I mean, from General Motors, from Atari, from Signetics, from Fairchild, from all these companies. I mean, that's a lot of people to be unemployed in one area.
Of jobs that will be here will basically be for skilled people, your engineers and these kinds of people. So this area in the Silicon Valley or other areas where they have a lot of electronic plants are going to be basically research and development areas.
The production and assembly itself will probably be just completely gone. At least 99.9% of it will be gone.
Last year, workers' take-home pay was 860 pesos a day. Families that were used to buy 5 kilos or 5 dozen tortillas for their family were down to 1. There was no one eating meat regularly, not even once a month. We had people buying eggs by the unit and milk by the glass, and this in order to keep up some of their strength.
The maquiladora industry is expanding tremendously. The wages in Mexico are one of the lowest in the world.
For a long time, I have seen all the injustices committed against us, and I always repressed the anger.
Industrial work puts women into contact with one another. This is one of the experiences that most women throughout these last 15 years have said has been the most meaningful part of their work in the twin plants. They begin to have friends, they begin to relate to one another, and they begin to establish a tremendous amount of solidarity, not only inside the plant, but in their neighborhoods, and also in regards to their personal problems.
At first, I was afraid to take part in the workers' meetings because I thought I'd be suspended or fired, but later I got brave. They explained to me about the federal labor laws. We began to study books, and I saw many ways we could improve the situation in the plant.
There came a time when one of our fellow workers asked for a higher salary. Instead of listening to him, they beat him up and put him under arrest.
Todos protestamos.
So we all decided to protest and we stopped working.
We went to the maquiladora factories at 4 o'clock in the morning. We didn't have enough cardboard to write on to tell people what the strike was about, so we wrote on our work aprons. We want an increase. This is a strike. Enough injustice.
Porque tenemos necesidad de que se nos haga justicia.
It's a necessity that we get justice.
Mujeres embarazadas que están a peligro.
We are here to defend our rights.
Defender nuestros derechos con entusiasmo, con gran heroísmo, con valentía.
We are hungry for justice.
Tenemos hambre de justicia, que se nos haga justicia.
The workers will suffer through the unrest that they're creating as a consequence of the union activity, and the industry suffers because they're being affected by this situation. The end result is that, on one side, the industry tends not to increase its operations in this area. They are thinking of going elsewhere. They may be looking further on.
American industry is not looking for, they're not looking for any giveaways. The people who are working in those plants, they're the ones that caused the problems in Reynosa. The same thing is going to happen in Reynosa that is happening here in Rose. And that is that those companies will simply leave. They will go someplace else in Mexico.
Te amenazan, pierdes tu trabajo.
Who isn't scared of losing their jobs?
Y luego es una presión psicológica.
It's a psychological pressure.
Quieren cargar a nuestra responsabilidad.
They threaten you. They say it's going to be our responsibility if the plants leave.
Entonces, ante eso hecho evidente.
But if the plants leave, it's their responsibility.
Pero nosotros no hemos retrocedido.
It's got to be clear, though, that we don't want the plants to leave.
Que las plantas maquiladoras se vayan.
The strikers won some concessions from companies, a brief 2-month wage increase, and for the first time, the right to elect their own union leadership. Democratic elections were allowed in choosing union officers, and campaigning began to promote the candidates. Movement's candidates won by a landslide, but the newly elected officers were never allowed to be installed. Pressure was brought to bear on the leaders of the movement. The most visible participants began to lose their jobs, fired by the factory management. Four of the fired reform leaders protested by going on a hunger strike in Reynosa's main plaza. After 14 days, the atmosphere had grown tense.
Entonces, nuestros compañeros se pusieron en huelga de hambre.
My friends went on a hunger strike as a protest, and now the authorities have begun to threaten us. Sometimes they follow us, but the hunger that we feel helps us overcome our fear, and now we are no longer afraid.
I was there in the plaza to organize with some fellow workers.
Pues yo estaba allí, ¿verdad? Tratando de más o menos de organizar con otros compañeros a ver qué íbamos a hacer.
And then came the reporter.
Un reportero, ¿no?
When I arrived, what I saw was the action by municipal police to remove the hunger strikers from their cots.
Cuando estaba levantando las notas en una libreta,
he was taking notes in a notebook, and the authorities came over and told him, "Come on, Blondie, write whatever you want, because tomorrow morning your body's going to end up floating in the river."
And then I turned around and saw that column of federal and municipal police approaching me.
I tried to stop them, and they hit me here with a pistol.
Imagino que con una pistola, un cachazo, yo creo.
I was taken into the place where they interrogated me. And I didn't know what was going to happen, and they didn't take the blindfold off.
lo que es democracia.
The democracy they say we have, it's only an image.
Hay imagen, es imagen nada más.
And then at that point was when I felt, extended electric shock against the left side of my neck.
Esta tortura, ¿verdad? Lo torturaron para
This torture, they did it to get him to confess something, that he was part of our movement. But it is not true. We didn't even know him.
No lo conocíamos.
Shock me if I didn't give a strong enough answer. They would shock me if I didn't know an answer. I was being told that if I came out of this situation alive, that I should never, ever touch this story again.
Estando dentro de México.
Within Mexico, the worker has certain constitutional rights. Individual guarantees, federal laws, labor laws that are supposed to protect us. And yet, we're kind of semi-slaves.
Semi-esclavos, y eso no es mentira. Es verdad.
At ipinangangako nila bukod sa pagiging mababa ng lakas paggawa.
Our government promises foreign investors that in addition to cheap labor, they will also hold down the labor force
Hahawakan nila ang labor force
so that the workers will not be able to organize.
Assembly workers from electronic, textile, and garment factories secretly to compare work conditions and to plan strategies for reform.
Kahit yung ismak niya tingnan. Sa amin sa Dingbilay, ano yung sistema nila for overtime?
At my garment factory, they force us to work overtime. One night we couldn't stand it. We were hungry. But they locked the gates so we couldn't get out.
Ang dahilan ng pagwewelga namin, kababaan ng amin.
We earn so little, it is not enough for daily subsistence. So we had to ask for a raise in order to live as human beings. But to get it, we were forced to strike.
Galit na galit siya dahil ang itinuturing niyang mga gusamos at
We formed a human barricade to stop them from transferring the garments to another factory. Then the military came.
Capital has internalized and organized at international level, transboundary level. The workers have to correspond to that internationalization of capital with the internationalization of labor organization.
I think country by country unionization is not going to be the answer. Maybe industry-wide unionization. I can't see why a company with a plant in Taiwan, with another one in England, with another one in the United States, with another one in Mexico, with another one in the Caribbean, and with another one in the Philippines, another one in Sri Lanka, or wherever, where the industry itself, the workers could really organize industry by industry, even if it is an international workforce. And in this way, have informal of wage rates within their country's reality and negotiate under the whole spectrum.
I'm all alone now. My daughter's in the city. Even with her help, I can't seem to make it. And now I heard about a strike.
Nakapasok ka pa ba yan dyan sa trabaho mo? Ang tagal naman.
I try to be strong. I try to give my mother words that will make her strong. So I told her that maybe the time will come when she will understand what I'm doing and what I've helped to start.
Sana nga, anak.
Dahil nakikita ko talaga sa nanay, emotionally upset na siya sa nangyayari sa akin. Dahil marami nga kami mga frustration na na-encounter. Pero sinasabi ko pa rin
These
sa kanya
experiences have changed me. I'm not the person I was before, and I cannot turn my back on the things I have begun.
Naunawain ang kalagayan ko ngayon. Dahil nakita rin niya, nasimulan ko, bakit din naman talaga talikuran ko kung ano yung nasimulan ko.